On this episode of Bronco Sports Chat, we'll be going over the Broncos' fall seasons. This is Bronco Sports Chat. Stay tuned.
Ball is thrown complete to Nathan Alt. Touchdown, Hastings College Broncos.
He's a young guy getting in.
What a play! What?
Dug out by Kenny. Ball's gonna be set up for conversion. And this play's going nuts!
Welcome to Bronco Sports Chat. I'm Andy Butler, sitting alongside Alan Himmel and Ross Drews to help analyze the fall season. Women's soccer, who was ranked 14th in the preseason, also picked to win the GPAC title under first-year coach Mark Hemans, started off rough with an 0-6 record, but was able to end September on a 4-6 note. Coach Hemans did describe this team as very young, with a lot of first-year players who were inexperienced.
The freshmen are always kind of tricky. It's an adjustment for them because they're away from home, and it's a new environment, and they're getting asked to do things they've never been able to do physically and mentally. And so you throw that all in, and then we had a ridiculously difficult schedule at the beginning of the season, and on the road all the time. That's a lot to take in. And I think once they found their stride, and then we started hitting conference and with those tough matches, they were just kind of hardened a little bit, and mentally and physically. And so, and I think that, they just started to get more confident and more comfortable because they know they had played really hard matches at the beginning, and they knew they were going to get benefits later on in the season.
Football, who was receiving votes for the top 25 in the preseason, was picked third in the conference, but started off hot on a 6-0 note. Men's soccer, however, was unranked to start the season, but still picked to win the GPAC. They started off with a 6-4 September record. Volleyball, also unranked to start the season, was picked fourth in the conference under first-year coach Matt Buttermore. The Lady Broncos started off hot with a 6-2 record, winning the HC Classic against two highly ranked opponents that bumped the Broncos up to number 9 in the nation. Kendra Schween won the NAIA Player of the Week, and here's Kirk Orndorff with a closer look.
After a week of going 5-0, the Bronco volleyball team skyrocketed up the top 25 poll and is now sitting at number 9. The ladies are on a 10-match winning streak, including victories over then number 11 Doane and then number 12 Oklahoma Baptist. After this, head coach Matt Buttermore thought this would happen.
I knew we were going to be top 15 for sure. So 9 was a little higher than I thought, but again, these girls have been working hard. I think it's well deserved, and we've come up with some big wins to prove that they deserve that. Now we have to come out and win a few more matches.
Leading the way for the team is senior Kendra Schween. After a combined 40 kills against these two teams, Schween was named NAIA National Player of the Week.
It means a lot. It's just nice to be recognized for hard work, and my teammates getting us ranked number 9 has just, it was just amazing to hear that overall.
Kendra's a warrior. She's a battler. She comes to play. She's a competitor. She wants to win everything she comes out in practice. Anytime we're playing a game, she wants to win. And that shows on the court. And obviously, she has some physical talent to go along with that. And the combination of the two results in what you saw last week. So.
The team is in the middle of its biggest gap between matches, as its next match isn't until September 22nd, when the team will host Northwestern College. With the volleyball team, this is Kirk Orndorff, HCMedia.
Thanks, Kirk, for that closer look. Hastings College finished the month of September on an 11-1 record. Moving on to October, volleyball stayed hot with a 9-0 record with 2 very exciting 5-set victories. Here's Colton Spearman with a look of how they were dealing with such great success.
The Hastings College Lady Bronco volleyball team is having a stellar season. They're ranked 6th nationally and are undefeated in conference play, posting a 20-3 record thus far. And first-year head coach Matt Buttermore seems to always get a smile on his face every time he gets to explain why his team is having so much success.
Good players, being deep in a lot of positions. Our goal as we're recruiting going forward and this year is to have 2 of the best teams in the GPAC in our gym every day. So I don't want to say I'm surprised, but it's nice to be 10-0, let's say that.
One of those good players includes senior Kendra Schween, who also wasn't surprised about the team's success this year.
I don't know that we necessarily expected to be undefeated so much as we expected to have a great year. We knew we could come out number one. We've had a lot of tough sets, and we've done a great job to pull them all out.
This group of upperclassmen have gone through a lot over the 3 or 4 years since getting on campus, as they have seen a new head coach every year. And for Schween, she's gone through Coach Ron Alexander, Coach Lori Wilderson, Coach Lindy Rouzet, and now Coach Matt Buttermore.
It's hard to just have to prove yourself year after year. Every single year I've had to re-earn my spot, and I think overall that's probably made me a better player as well, just having to prove that I deserve to be on the court year after year.
Last year, the Lady Broncos finished with a losing record. This year, they're now 6th in the nation. So why this year? Why Coach Buttermore? What is he doing to put this team at the top?
Coach Buttermore is very easy to respect. He knows a lot about the sport. He pushes us to be the best that we can be, and we know that this is our year and we want to make the most of it.
If you ask these girls how they think that the season's going to end, well, you can probably guess their answer.
I would say, being ranked 6th in the nation, we have a very good shot of going all the way.
For HCMedia, I'm Colton Spearman.
Thanks, Colton, for that closer look. Moving on to football, who is ranked as high as number 14 in the nation and with that 6-0 record, dropped their last 4 games to Morningside, Doane, Northwestern, and Westland. Men's soccer finished with a 12-6 record at the end of October with a 9-1 conference record, led by scorer Jordan Green and net defender Alex Geyer. The women went 6-0-1 in the month of October, with finishing up with a 9-0-1 conference record, offensively led by Kelsey Nealon and Nikki Bernhardt. Here to help analyze the fall sports seasons with me are Alan Hamill and Ross Drews. Ross, we're going to start with you. What are your first thoughts on this women's soccer season?
Well, I think initially it was a very disappointing season for Hastings College, starting off 0-6. Not completely unheard of, Andy, when you get a new coach, but they did dominate the GPAC pretty much as expected, Alan.
Yeah, they did start off a little bit slow, but they did play a lot of tough non-conference games, had some tough competition there. But as you mentioned, once they got to GPAC play, things got going quite well for them. I think Coach Hemans did a good job of getting his team together as the season moved on and put them in a good place to make a run in the postseason.
Very much improved style, Andy. I think that's the big thing that's coming out of the regular season for this.
You guys touched on some great points. Moving on to football, Alan, we'll start with you first. What were your thoughts on football?
The football team started out well. They won 6 in a row. I think a lot of the things, a big thing that stuck out, though, was they gave up a lot of points against some teams that weren't as good as, they were towards the bottom of the GPAC. And once they got into some tougher teams, Morningside, Doane, Northwestern, then those problems showed up more prevalently, and the losses kind of started to pile on top of each other.
Yeah, I think Alan hit that one really well. I think we also saw the many faces of John Dostal this year. Through the first 6 games, we saw somebody who was on pace to set records because he was well ahead of where he was last year, both passing and rushing. But then in those last 6 games, when your confidence gets shot as a quarterback, he tanked pretty quick. And I mean, all credit due to him. I mean, he did really well coming through that last stretch, but confidence is a big deal, and you could see it when things would get down. Dostal's performance would really drop off this year.
Again, hit 2 crucial bits there with the tale of 2 schedules, it kind of seems like. Now moving on to probably the most dominant Hastings College team. Ross, go back to you. What are your thoughts on the men's soccer?
Well, men's soccer did kind of as expected this year. They came out, they performed really well. The crazy thing is, at times maybe not looking as dominant as they had in the past. Still managing to win the GPAC title on a very soggy night here in Hastings. Still going to the national tournament, but I just don't know if they have that edge to them this year like they've had in past years.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it quite well. This is a team that's pretty good, but they're not as good as some of the teams we've seen here in the past. The players have done a good job. They've won a lot of games, beat some good teams, but just not the level we've seen in the past.
I think the really big thing about both soccer teams is, Andy, when they go through the regular season, the GPAC really offers these 2 teams no substantial competition. Time and time again, it just seems like they flow through it, and then when you get to the national title and you play teams that have a lot of substance to them and have a lot of talent on them, that's where we run into some problems. But the men's soccer team of the two soccer teams probably has the better chance of advancing.
That's exactly right. Now moving on to the kind of the dark horse and the surprising team, Alan, I'll start with you. What were your thoughts on the volleyball season?
Volleyball did very well. I think they exceeded expectations, as you mentioned. Expected to be, third in the GPAC. They really dominated. Kendra Schween getting Player of the Week multiple times. Coach Buttermore just doing a good job in his first season here to bring this team together and make it what it turned out to be, and that was a great season.
I think the physicality of this team really stepped up. Last year it seemed like when you're going to do a 5-set struggle, this team would just really fall off in that 4th and 5th set, didn't have a whole lot of battle, and maybe just enough to get out of the 4th, or they were leading and gave away a 4th set. This year, not so much. I think that has a lot to do with Coach Buttermore's wife, Laura Buttermore, coming in, really taking control of this program and the training behind it, and really bulking them up, for lack of a better term. And that helps them in those they only played like 4 or 5-set games this entire year. But when it counted, they were able to pull a few of those out, going 26-3. Through the regular season, really 26-2, because one of those games was against the number 1 ranked UNK team.
Yeah.
Didn't really count because it was a non-NAIA game. But still, this volleyball team came out of nowhere, and I wouldn't say they surprised everybody, but they had the talent to go out there and beat every team that they played.
Yeah, definitely did have a ton of talent. Maybe kind of flew under the radar per se with that new coach, and didn't know how things would kind of fill out. But we are going to take a quick commercial break. You're watching Bronco Sports Chat. Welcome back to Bronco Sports Chat. All 3 conference tournament eligible teams won the outright season championship, meaning they would host the conference tournament. Cam Pinner found out exactly what it takes to host a conference tournament.
Hastings College will be hosting GPAC conference tournament games for 3 different fall sports. This requires a lot of planning behind the scenes for the HC athletic department.
There's forms that need to be filled out, so if you're hosting, you have forms that need to be taken care of for costs and revenue purposes, so the GPAC can understand that and make sure they have documentation of it, same with the NAIA.
A lot of the preparation that goes into hosting conference tournament games starts well before the regular season is over.
You start prepping for this when you hit 8, 9, 10, and 0. Okay, what do we have to do for talking to the GPAC, talking to the NAIA so that we're prepared for this, making sure we get things out to the students so they understand, you may not get them free unless our president says, okay, you're allowed to.
All of the money made from hosting GPAC conference games goes back to the GPAC conference itself.
Financially, all the money, the profits go from all of these tournaments, not all the GPAC tournaments, wherever they're at, they go right back to the conference. That's kind of what helps fund the conference, is the postseason tournaments.
One aspect of hosting these tournaments is finding workers to help out with the actual games that can sometimes fall on the same days.
Things at the same time, it's not as big of a hassle because people are kind of used to it already. They've been here long enough, so they just kind of get used to the process, and they know if we need to send out a group email, if we need help for stats or something, we send out a student-led email so that students can come in and help us out.
For HCMedia, I'm Cam Penner.
Thanks, Cam, for that closer look. The women's soccer team won their first round matchup against Dakota Wesleyan 6-0, then moved on to play Morningside in the second round and won that game also 3-0, but then slipped up and lost to Doane in the conference championship 0-3. The men, however, also played Dakota Wesleyan in the first round and won 3-0, moved on to play Morningside in the second round, won 5-0, and then beat Midland in the championship 2-0. In volleyball, Hastings College won in straight sets against Concordia in the first round, beat Midland in the second round in a 5-set thriller, and then lost to Doane in a 5-set thriller. Guys, Ross, starting with you with the women's soccer team, how do you think they fared in that conference tournament?
Well, I think they did great until they got to the championship game and then gave up a hat trick to Doane out there, Andy, and that's just very unusual for this Hastings College women's team, losing at home for the first time, I believe, on their home field for the first time in like 5 years.
Yeah, it was like 30 games.
And so that's a pretty crushing defeat for them. Brittany Toth giving up 3 goals to the same person. Just not how you want to finish out a year, but it happens.
Yeah, definitely not how the Broncos wanted to end their season against their rival here on home turf. And that game, they got down 1-0 and they seemed to be out of it. And then it just kept piling on and they couldn't climb out of the hole and ended up giving up the hat trick and then the game.
With that, we'll move on to men's soccer, where they seem to handle the GPAC tournament pretty handily. Alan, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, they did a good job in the GPAC tournament, picking up some wins in the first couple games. Then in the championship game, that was delayed by the weather. You saw that, played a good game in that one too. With the weather conditions, how they were, they won that game to win the GPAC championship. And they're moving on to the NAIA tournament now. They got a tough draw for that first round tournament game, but who knows? This team has past experience going to the national tournament, and they could make a run.
Yeah, I think Alan makes a good point. This team still has a lot of talent on it, but in that GPAC title game, which was the same night as the volleyball championship game, it rained, delayed that game, and then I was not able to be there. I was commentating volleyball, but I remember watching that game. We had it going so we could give updates, and then they were in the second half before a goal was even scored. And so I think that goes back to what we said a little bit earlier in the regular season, was this team just doesn't quite have the same edge to it. Or either that or GPAC teams are really making a big push to try to compete with Hastings College. Either way, it's going to start getting tough for them.
Yeah, exactly. Both great points. I will say they still have Jordan Green. With that note, we'll move on to Ross, the sport you commentate. Volleyball, how do you think they fared in that conference tournament?
Well, we started off the tournament absolutely amazing. Go out and sweep Concordia just like we were expected to do. Went out there, played great. I think several times during when I was commentating, I called it a textbook game because it was just typical Hastings College volleyball. It was jumping high, getting above the net, and just hitting hard. Kendra Schween, Shayna Shocker, all those ladies on the team. Haley Beardsley had some great sets out there. So that game was great. You move on to the second game against Midland, who they played on pink night, and you saw a lot of the same thing. This time Hastings College had made some mistakes. A textbook first set, dropped sets 2 and 3, had to come from behind in set 4, and then pulled away in the 5th set to get the win. Great stuff, a thriller. I'm pretty sure my partner Kirk lost his voice several times in that one. But then you get to the championship game, and this was the one where it really felt like Hastings College regressed to where they were when they played that first conference game against Doane and went 5 sets, just making mistakes left and right, not able to dig themselves out. Again, just like the Midland game, won the first set, dropped 2 and 3, and then it got a little shaky in sets 4 and 5. They were able to win 4 to keep it, to take it into a 5th set, and then in the 5th, it kind of fell apart. Lack of communication, service errors, and then when you spot somebody 8 points and you're trying to fight back to that when you're only playing to 15, anytime you make a mistake, that just adds to what they're doing, and then that just makes the win easier for them. So it was really tough to see Doane win on the Hastings College court over at Lynn Farrell Arena, but there again, it was in their hands, ready for the taking, and just didn't happen this time.
Yeah, the Broncos, did a good job in the first game of the tournament. The second game, a little bit scary, going 5 sets against Midland, the team that they had swept in the regular season. And then that final game against Doane, that was a game that, as you mentioned, you eliminate a lot of those mistakes, and that's a totally different outcome in that game. And, they still got a first-round bye for the NAIA national tournament, so they still have good position heading into the NAIA tournament up at Sioux City, and they could definitely get quite a ways in that tournament.
I think you're right. I think the volleyball team will go up there. Hopefully, it'll refocus after the loss to Doane in the GPAC title game. The problem with this is they played some pretty good competition in the GPAC. But it fluctuated. I mean, it was a lot like soccer a couple years ago where you played the best team and then you played the bottom teams for 2-3 games. Same thing with volleyball. Now the problem is you go to the national tournament, you play good teams all the way through. So if they lose focus anywhere in there, they're coming home.
Exactly. Definitely a successful postseason run by all of the Hastings College sports. Tough, though, when you lose 2 of those championships to Doane. On that note, though, we'll take a quick commercial break. You're watching Bronco Sports Chat. Welcome back to Bronco Sports Chat. Switching gears, this fall an issue arose with the intramural program here at Hastings College and how the varsity athletes were participating in them. Colton Spearman has a closer look on the issue.
Intramurals are a fun way to compete with and against your friends for bragging rights that any student can participate in. However, that's not the same story for athletes here on campus. Coach Ken Clay, head coach of the track team, made the decision this week to cancel the team's first event, the Kansas State Invite, because members of his team were found to be participating in intramural competition.
We had an incident, and it involved a significant number of student athletes in our program after we established these guidelines. But we know it's in the best interest because if you make bad choices, there has to be consequences. Otherwise, if there aren't repercussions, if there isn't that accountability, then you don't create the team culture and dynamic that you need to be successful.
So how do the student athletes really feel about not being able to be a part of intramurals? I sat down with a couple student athletes to hear what they had to say.
I can see both sides, but it would be nice if we had a little leeway to be able to play intramurals and things like that.
It depends on the intensity of the intramural that they're playing in. I mean, it's not like we were taking it super serious and attempting to get hurt. And I can understand where he's coming from, where he wants to keep his athletes safe.
Even though some student athletes still want to participate in intramurals, the biggest issue for coaches still is staying healthy. And Coach Clay is not alone in feeling this way, as there are other coaches here on campus who have the same policies.
The physical intramural events, we tell them no. Now, I'm sure some sneak and play. We tell them if you're a varsity baseball player, you shouldn't be doing the intramural football, the intramural basketball. You don't want them to not enjoy the college experience. But there are other things that are part of the college experience besides intramurals, and when they make a commitment to the team, they understand they have to give up some of those things.
For HCMedia, I'm Colton Spearman.
Thanks, Colton, for that closer look. Guys, what are your guys' thoughts about the issues of the varsity athletes playing intramurals and whatnot?
Personally, I don't think it's a bad idea. A lot of these players are on scholarship, and if you go out there and you get hurt, Andy, that's some money down the drain, and that's one more player for the coach that he doesn't have now.
Yeah, the coaches are just trying to protect their players, protect their teams. They don't want to have a key player go down in the middle of the season or before the season. Whenever if you lose somebody, that's a big loss for your team.
I guess on the other hand, though, is it any different than somebody saying moving a refrigerator or something like that and drops it on their ankle and busts their ankle? I mean, that's not intramural sports. Are you going to say they can't do any heavy lifting or anything during the season either?
Yeah, and you make a very good point. What I was just going to add to that, though, is like when you play the intramural footballs and the volleyballs and stuff like that, the football takes place outside. The weather's getting colder. It's easier to pull muscles and whatnot. Then when you get to the volleyball and basketball, you you're jumping, you're landing on your feet, knees can blow out, ankles. So definitely, I like where you stand, Ross, with the whole idea that money's going down the drain. There's a spot for them, and they should kind of focus on that. But again, intramurals does pose kind of the opposite, where a student can, have fun playing the volleyball that, maybe not have been offered in high school and stuff like that. All right, now joining us, shortstop, utility man for the baseball team, Kirk Orndorff. Kirk, what's your take being a varsity athlete in the intramural system?
Well, you heard Coach Bovey when he was talking about the intramurals and if you're a varsity athlete, don't do it. And I completely agree with him on that one because, this fall, it wasn't during intramurals, but it was actually during practice, I sprained my ankle. Cleat got caught in the grass, it twisted, and it looked disgusting for about 2.5 weeks. In fact, it still to this day is swollen. And that was from a practice environment where the entire program saw what happened. Now, had that happened during a intramural thing, I've now got to explain why I'm limping at practice. I've got to explain why I'm not able to perform at 100% when we are fighting for our jobs in the fall season.
That's exactly right. And Bovey put it out there perfectly with how he said, everything. And you bring up a good point. Even getting hurt at practice, is a bad thing. Having to explain the reason why you have a cast on or anything like that is kind of just demoralizing to the whole program, to the guys underneath you, above you, the guys you play along with.
Yeah, and this fall, shortstop is the position that we are fighting for the most. Like there's the most vary at the shortstop position. And so when that happened, we had one shortstop who tore something in his elbow. We had one shortstop who got hurt during class. He had burned himself in glass blowing class. And then I rolled my ankle. So now we're down to one shortstop. And then we had to move a third baseman over to shortstop, move a catcher to third base to try to compensate for that. Luckily, I came back quickly. I didn't actually miss a practice for it. I missed a couple games, but I didn't miss a practice for it. But if this were to have happened during intramurals, it would not have been a good situation.
Exactly. Any last thoughts on what Kirk brought up? Okay, with that, we'll take another quick timeout. You're watching Bronco Sports Chat. Welcome back to Bronco Sports Chat. Now it's time for our favorite segment. It's called Around the Cooler, where each person gets 30 seconds to talk about anything Bronco related from this first fall season. Ross, we're going to start with you, so go ahead.
Well, first of all, congratulations to all the Bronco sports team, the fall sports teams. Soccer did pretty much as well as planned, made it through the GPAC. Women not pulling off the GPAC title quite this year, but the men advancing on to the national tournament. We wish them the best of luck. Football did really well through the first 6 games, then kind of fell off at the end, not going to any postseason tournaments, but we wish them the best of luck. Coach Harper's really done a decent job with this team so far, but my main shout out goes out to this volleyball team, picked to finish 4th in the conference to start the year. Not doing horrible last year in a transition, but now getting to Coach Buttermore, they did an excellent job headed to the national tournament.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Ross said. All the fall sports teams did a really good job. You saw the soccer teams go at the top of the GPAC conference this season. You know, the men's team winning the GPAC tournament, the women's team falling in the GPAC championship. The football team started off the season great. Would have liked to seen them do a little bit better down the stretch, but you know, tough competition, and they had a good season overall.
And lastly, I mean, all three or both of you guys said exactly what I kind of wanted to say, but I'm going to strictly talk men's soccer. The other three did awesome, you know, throughout the fall, but that men's soccer team did what it took every game in and out in that GPAC tournament and everything. Off to play Oklahoma Westland in the first round of the NAIA national tournament. Good luck, guys. Bring home another championship. And that's going to do it here for Bronco Sports Chat. For Ross Struess, Alan Hamill, I'm Andy Butler. We hope you enjoyed it.